Welcome to the top 5 scariest YouTube stories of all time.
It's probably relevant to the story to start off with the fact that I'm female, and also that I'm a huge fan of this band called Ghost. I have this one Ghost shirt that is a bootleg copy of an extremely rare shirt, and I honestly love it. When I bought it, it wound up being way too small to wear, but since I dropped a bunch of weight recently, I celebrated by putting it on and making a trip to the mall, mostly to pick up a new album I wanted. So I'm just browsing through the mall's music store, not particularly finding what I wanted, but just seeing if they had any other cool stuff, when this dude I don't know sort of makes his way towards me and also starts to browse. I don't pay him any mind. I figured he was just a fellow metal fan, given his Gojira shirt. He was actually kind of good looking, so I didn't get the creepy vibe at all. I'm flipping through the secondhand CDs when I hear this dude start talking. "Oh, you like Ghost?" It sort of took me a second to realize he was talking to me. I space out a lot and honestly hate small talk, like it makes me want to lay low in traffic, so it caught me off guard and I almost pretended not to hear him, but he said it again. I guess I couldn't ignore him, and to be honest, a lot of random metalheads you meet turn out to be pretty cool. Yeah, definitely," I said, trying to sound nothing more than polite, and also making sure he saw my wedding ring. "They're my favorite." It sort of made me feel uncomfortable when he didn't, smile and start going, "Yeah, I saw them back when," or something like that. He just looked at me like I just said some terrible insult about his mother. Now, this weird feeling starts kicking in, and I just go back to pretending to be interested in a CD. He didn't take the hint because the next thing out of his mouth was, "That shirt is bootleg. It's bootleg." I looked back at him with a really frustrated expression, like, "Leave me alone, man." All I said was, "Yeah, it is," and decided to get out of there before I had to listen to some pretentious metal elitist rant. Dude just keeps staring at me with that ridiculous expression until I'm out of the store, and I think that's the end of it. I decided to check out Hot Topic, shut up I know, to see if they had any Behemoth shirts, and by this point I had totally forgotten about Shirt Man. I'm just sort of picking through the shirts and feeling more than a little angry at the lack of actual metal tees and the excess of teeny bopper crap like Beaver or whatever. And then I turn around, and there's that guy again. It sort of startled me to see him there, and for a split second, I thought it was just a coincidence. Maybe he was just trying to find his kid or whatever. But that all went to crap when he looks at me, looking angry this time, and says, "That shirt is bootleg. Do you know how disrespectful that is?" I'm legitimately not the nicest person in the world if you push my buttons, so I make this angry expression and tell him, "Look, man, I don't give two craps if it's bootleg or not. It's a sick shirt and I'll wear whatever I want. Excuse me." And I shoved past him as rudely as possible, told the cashier, who I knew from being in there a lot, that I'd be back in like an hour to pay for stuff that she had behind the counter, and left. This time, I'm angry, and I'm texting both my husband and my dad at this point because of this guy, so at least they knew where I was and what was going down. After I blew my stack, I felt better, and again brushed this guy off. Last thing on my day at the mall agenda was to get my nails done, so I go to the salon, and as I'm getting my acrylics put on, I look out the side of the salon. It's like a big wall of windows so you can see out into the mall. And oh my god, there's the guy once again, looking even more mad. What is his problem? I thought to myself. The rational side of my brain kept telling me that maybe he's just having a terrible day, and I was a convenient target or whatever, and that maybe his girl is getting her nails done too. This place was packed. Another half hour or so goes by, and this guy hasn't budged an inch. Crap, I don't even know if he blinked. I was really freaked out by now, and with the hand that wasn't getting manicured, I'm frantically texting my dad, husband, and older brother, saying, "Look, whichever one of you is closest to the mall, get here now." My dad lived like 5 minutes up the road from the mall, and he's always armed, so he says, "Don't worry, baby, I'm on my way," which made me feel a lot better. And I'm so glad I decided to text my dad because things got wild once I walked out of the nail place. No sooner do I set 1 foot out of the salon that this creep comes rushing right up to me, red-faced and literally screaming, "Your shirt is bootlegged! It's bootleg!" I don't care about ghosts. You disrespect them all. And he keeps going on and on and on, calling me every name in the book. I am honestly pretty tough, but when you've got a guy who has a foot and at least 50 pounds on you, it's hard not to be scared. Shirt Guy is towering over me, and by this point I'm legitimately crying. I can't believe nobody ever called mall security or the cops or whatever, but I think they just assumed he was like my boyfriend or something. Not a great excuse, but that's all I could figure. My dad picked the perfect time to show up because this dude was literally a second away from grabbing me or hitting me or something, and I gotta be honest, I was ready to literally pee my pants. My dad is an enormous guy, former Navy, literally built like a tank with a Desert Eagle on his hip. That's when I hear him yell, "You got a problem, buddy?" with his hand on that big gun. I run like a little scared kid behind my dad, and this idiot actually tries to yell at my dad, but once he saw the gun, he scampered. My dad rode me in his truck over to my car and then followed me back home just to make sure that that idiot didn't follow me, and he stayed with me until my husband got home. Thank the Lord, I'm a daddy's girl.
When I was about 12 years old, my great-uncle John came from the Ukraine to visit us in Canada. He had a lot of great stories, but this is the one that stood out the most. In the late 1960s, John was traveling by train from his village to another to visit family. He had to change trains at one point. He was dropped off at what amounted to a platform in a hut in the middle of nowhere. There was no one else at the station, and other than a dirt road that led off into the surrounding woods, there was nothing there. He waited for some time, but no train came. It was winter, it was getting colder and darker, and just about the time he started worrying about a place to stay and to get some food to eat, an old woman appeared out of the twilight. She asked if he was waiting for such and such train, and when he said he was, she said it wouldn't be long until the following day. She asked if he needed a bed for the night, and offered him a meal in a room at her house, which she said was about an hour's walk from the station. Lodging with locals was more or less the standard when traveling in that part of the USSR, and Great-Uncle John wasn't looking forward to a hungry night, a cold platform. So of course, as you can imagine, he was glad to accept her offer. He took his suitcase and they set off together, down the dark road into the forest. It was more than an hour away. Well, it was more like 2. And by the time they arrived at the woman's small, 2-story house, John was tired and hungry. They went inside, and the woman lit up some oiled lamps and warmed them up some food. It was the first time John was able to see the woman clearly, and he was a bit startled to realize that the old woman was actually a man. Now, not wanting to pry and too tired to care, John finished his soup and asked where he would be sleeping. She led him up the stairs to a tiny room with a window that contained a single bed, nothing else. He thanked her, they said goodnight, and she closed the door. Then she locked it, leaving him in the dark. Somewhat creeped out by this, John called to her, but she didn't answer, and he heard nothing else. Figuring he would deal with it in the morning, and that she'd probably done it by mistake, John set his suitcase down and laid on the bed, deciding to make the best of it and get some sleep. Before he could actually fall asleep, though, he felt like the urge to go to the restroom. He got out of bed, hoping to find a chamber pot to do his business in. He got onto his hands and knees and began to feel under the bed in the darkness, thinking that that's where the pot would be, if there was one. Instead, he found a body. "Nope," said Great-Uncle John, and went right to the window to see if he could exit the room that way. The thing is, it was nailed shut. He knew that if he remained in the room, he was a goner, but if he broke the window and tried to get out that way, there was a good chance that the old woman, and who knows who else was there, would end up hearing him and come into the room before he could get away. So he did the only thing he can do. He pulled the body from under the bed, heaved it onto the mattress, and covered it with a blanket. Then he got under and waited. Sure enough, about an hour or so later, he heard footsteps coming slowly up the stairs, then toward the room. The lock clicked, and the knob turned slowly. In the gloom, John saw somebody move toward the bed. Then he heard several noises and sickening thuds. The person had bashed the body on the bed with a large crowbar, which they then dropped onto the floor right in front of John. There was silence. Then the person went out of the room and the door was shut again. The footsteps went down the stairs, then there was silence again. John moved out from under the bed, took the crowbar, and was able to slowly pry the window open. Now, he didn't say it, but I was pretty sure he was scared the entire time. When the window was up, he threw his suitcase out, then dove through himself, not caring what was below him, only worried about what was behind. He landed without too much injury, and began to run to a field behind the house, towards some lights in the far distance. It turned out to be a highway, with some military and transport trucks on it. John, thankfully, was able to get a ride to another village, where he could catch a train. He didn't bother reporting what happened to the authorities, since at the time in the USSR, there was a distinct chance he would have been the one to get in trouble. He was just so thankful that he escaped, and decided that the next time he traveled to visit relatives, he would take another way. I live in the Mendenhall Valley in Juneau. The high school I attend is downtown, so it's quite a ride just to get to school and back. Sometimes, my family and I go for a car trip, and just drive around downtown, out of sheer boredom. On this occasion, it was my parents' anniversary, and my dad wanted to show my mom this neat trail that he'd noticed while at work. We all got in the car, me, my brother, and our parents, and drove downtown. The trail leads up one of the mountainsides, and the hike, if you go all the way, takes about a day. We decided to just walk up the trail to the old entrance to one of the mines that are scattered around here. All these mines are closed down and have been for decades. Because of this, they are dusty and dark and just plain creepy. Anyway, once we got to the old mine outside, there was this little exhibit that showed some of the old tools used in the mines. My parents and brother were checking that out, while I wandered around aimlessly. I seem to have a short attention span, apparently. I started kicking this rock around. It happened to land inside that mine. I followed it, and then I realized where I was. There's this rusted gate that had the sign, "Closed, do not enter," and stuff like that. About 10 feet or so past the entrance was this really big pile of rocks that seemed to seal off the entrance. I had assumed that this was one of the many mines that had caved in. It was mid-afternoon, so when I started to get a chill, I noticed almost right away. The underground wind changed direction, and instead of blowing towards me, it started pulling me closer to the entrance. Inside, I could suddenly see 4 or 5 men, dressed in these dirty white shirts and jeans with suspenders. They all had a pick on their shoulder. They stopped walking as they seemed to notice me watching them. They had no eyes, just these black empty holes, and I couldn't move. I was suddenly overcome with this feeling of absolute despair and fear. Simultaneously, the men stretched out their free hands and pointed their fingers at me, almost as if they were accusing me of something. Next thing I knew, my mom had a hold of me and was shaking me and yelling, "Tiffany, Tiffany, what's wrong? What happened?" I realized that I was out of the covered entrance of the mine. I wasn't quite feeling so despairing. I answered my mom with, "I'm fine," or something to that effect. Apparently, while I was watching the men, my parents and brother had started to hike back down to the car. My mom noticed that I wasn't with them and went back to find me. Once she got back to the mine entrance, she heard me making this horrible noise. She told me that she ran and grabbed me, saying that I was white and staring at something that wasn't there, and saying over and over, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it." She pulled me away from the mine, and then I was fine. I didn't even remember anything past seeing the men pointing at me. I told her what I saw, but she didn't see the men and thought I just had an episode or something. I forgot about it and didn't really think much of it after. This ended up happening in the middle of the day, around 2 in the afternoon, and we were nowhere near the river or house. The more I thought about what I'd seen, the more I realized that those men must have passed away when the mine caved in. Why they accused me of it, I don't even know. But I haven't gone there since. At least, not that far up the trail. The lower half is used as an outside run for gym class, but whenever I go on that trail, the spot behind my right ear starts to hurt. It gets worse and worse until I almost can't stand it. Anyone have any insight into what I might be feeling? I live in New York City, right along a famous park. In fact, I'm in a fairly safe area. I had 2 of my closest friends visiting me from England, and was determined to give them the best trip possible. To set the scene to this story, we're 3 fairly small 19-year-old girls. This was in the transitioning months, between fall and winter, when the sun started setting at irregular times. In the park, there's an amazing running track with the most beautiful view of the skyline. I have lived in New York City my whole life, but this view still absolutely floors me. So of course, I wanted to bring my friends out to see it. It was about 8 p.m. and it started to get dark, so everything was especially beautiful. Now, the actual running track follows a small body of water and is elevated off the actual paths of the park slightly. In most areas, there's a thick row of trees separating the track from the actual paths where the tourists walk. Oftentimes at night, the paths aren't lit, but the running track and the main routes leading to it are. There were usually tons of runners out on the path at this time, but for some reason, we hadn't seen any for about 5 minutes. The three of us fell silent, and were looking at the beautiful skyline, and that's when we heard it. The worst scream I've ever heard in my life. It came from behind us in the absolute darkness. It was only separated by a row of trees. The scream was definitely from a woman, but the scary part was the absolute silence afterwards. We froze and stared at each other with no clue what to do. I looked through the trees and just barely made out a man walking away with his hood up. We sprinted in the other direction and went to a lit path that we could find. Luckily, we got home to my apartment without any trouble, but I can't get that scream out of my head. I never actually heard any news about it, but I always think about that mystery woman. I hope she's okay. Every year, my town hosts a carnival. Now it's a big deal. Carousels, fair games, Hall of Mirrors, and that dumb twirly swing ride that makes you want to vomit. They really do pull out all the stops for this one weekend in October. Growing up, I would get sugar sick, as my mom liked to call it, from all the cotton candy and funnel cakes. I'd only feel the symptoms after the night was done, while lying in bed and clutching my prizes, so I ignored it all and played back all the festivities in my head. I skipped the carnival now. It doesn't do anything for me anymore anyways. So imagine my dismay as my girlfriend, who helps work the carnival, dragged me along one night after all the crowds had left. "No lines," she squealed. "You know, I even know how to turn on the Ferris wheel." I tried looking excited. She yanked me over to the shooting gallery, and we sat down in front of the counter. Several bullseye targets hung about 15 feet away. We fired away, but of course, I let her win. I jumped the counter and made my way over to the prize rack. Huge stuffed animals, baseball caps, and t-shirts lined the whole wall. "Which one do you want?" I yelled back. She tried to look like she was making a life-alerting decision. I'll admit now, it was kind of cute. Before choosing, I see her whip out her cell phone and snap a picture of me right next to the prizes. Well, to be honest, I'm stuck between picking you or even the stuffed octopus next to the clown head doll. I'll take the octopus. I rolled my eyes and reached past the clown head doll for the octopus. From there, she pulled me over to the carousel. I watched her disappear into the engineer's control room. A few seconds later, the pipe organ started and the carousel cranked into motion. During the ride, she felt it was time for another picture. I really tried to smile this time. We only stayed in the Hall of Mirrors for a few minutes. It was pitch black in there. We kept bumping into mirrors in each other, and of course, she snapped another picture too. The blinding flash didn't help our disorientation. After the experience in the Hall of Mirrors, we decided to leave. She told me she was going to go home and post the pictures online, and told me to have a great night. The next morning, I got onto Facebook and noticed a small album she had uploaded. That's when I started reading through the comments. "Lucky, you guys got the carnival all to yourselves. Nice." Now, what struck me off guard were the next two comments. "Love the photobombing clown. Who's that dressed up as a clown behind you?" Wait, what? I looked through the pictures again, and sure enough, there it is. The carousel picture, there was a tall clown in the background. The speed of the ride somewhat blurred his image, but I could see him just standing there, arms at his sides. In the Hall of Mirrors, the flash illuminated the face of a smiling clown, and one mirror in the corner of the picture. But the only problem was, there was something chillingly twisted about his expression. It was at that moment I wondered just how many times I collided into him, thinking it was my girlfriend. And lastly, there is the picture of me standing next to the shooting gallery prize rack. There he was next to the octopus I grabbed for my girlfriend. I thought he was a doll. The realization made me absolutely sick. I was a hair's length away from him. His warm breath probably grazed my skin. Ugh, just thinking about it gives me the chills. I mean, what sort of sick delight did he get from doing this? I called up my girlfriend, who was still asleep at the time, and asked her if she knew the clowns that were hired for the carnival. Her reply made me shudder. They got rid of clowns 5 years ago when parents complained they were scaring the kids. Update. After this whole incident, my girlfriend quit her job at the carnival. We had a bonfire this November where she incinerated the stuffed octopus. She also pulled the album off of Facebook and deleted the pictures from her phone. She tells me the pictures disturbed her way too much. What she doesn't know, though, is that I copied the pictures from her Facebook and saved them to my hard drive. I'm thinking of posting them here, but part of me doesn't want to relive that night. What do you guys think?